Hey y'all, I'm Kim, host of Book Marketing Mania, and I'm so thrilled you're tuning in to learn how to build your audience and reach new readers as a podcast host and guest. Today, I'm joined by my new friend, April O'Leary. April is host of the I'm Booked podcast and founder of O'Leary Publishing. She's also the author of several books herself, and when I received April's sweet little book called Who Me, an Author? If they can do it, so can you. Well, I knew I had to invite her onto the show because, y'all, I'm writing my first book and determined to publish it this year. So I need all the encouragement I can get. And as a fellow podcast host and publisher, I couldn't wait for April to share how she supports authors, how she's seeing authors use podcasting as an incredible marketing tool, and all kinds of other good stuff. You are in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, April, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled you're here to serve my listeners today.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
This is so fun. So y'all heard me introduce April, and I'm just so excited to hear more about her publishing company and herself as an author, how she is marketing her book. So let's just kick it off, April. And first, I know everybody's chomping at the bit to hear about O'Leary Publishing and how you support authors.
I would love to answer that question. So O'Leary Publishing, we are an independent hybrid book publishing company. So we are best for nonfiction authors who publish in the genres of self-help, memoir, spirituality, business books, some academic, some that have come out of academia and have knowledge that they want to bring to the general public. Maybe they've done more like academic research, that kind of thing. So we help them get their message out. For first-time authors, we have had a number of authors who have been repeat authors, and then to grow their audience, which I know is your expertise.
Yeah. So tell us, where do you work with the author in the process? Because I know lots of different publishers do it differently. Like some people do the whole shebang, and some people, meet an author in a certain part of their journey and help out. So where do you do that?
Yes. So we are very adaptable. We have worked with authors who come to us with an idea, and we can take them from idea to published book through a process we call book mapping, which is where we initially do like a huge brainstorming session with them. Our head editor, Heather DeRocher, and I will. And then we help them kind of put all their ideas together into a logical table of contents, put together a template for chapter outlines and that kind of thing. And then they feel like they have a roadmap to write the book. And we coach them along the way. So our editorial process is very hands-on. It's a shared document whereby the author can have constant communication back and forth with the editor as they're writing. So that's really helpful for those who are first-time authors or maybe don't have a background in writing. And then we have others who come to us who have already written a very good first draft, and we can help them with developmental editing, sort of like, do all the pieces make sense? Are they all in the right order? Into line editing and proofreading. So we kind of take an author from wherever they've gotten on their own and get them across the finish line. So where they start, they may be in the top of the first inning or they may be in the middle of the fifth. So
Yeah, that's great. I get asked that so many times about, just who to turn to for those different things because there's so many moving pieces. And I know, some people have worked with someone and gotten to like a certain point and then it kind of got shelved for a while. So it's like, oh, who picks this back up? So it's nice to know just where you intersect with the author's path and can support them. And so you mentioned building audiences. So I definitely want to ask you about that, April. So just what you have seen from the publishing world, whether it's authors that you work with specifically and help them, or maybe just authors that you've consulted with, or in addition to yourself, when do you think is the time to start working on building the audience that will buy your book?
Well, it's a good question because it depends, first of all, what your goal is for the book. So I always like to talk to the author from the very beginning before they even contract with us about their vision. So I say, pretend the book is in your hand right now and it's done. Forget how hard it's going to be to write it or how you're going to do it or how much it's going to cost or where are the people going to read it. Like, what do you want it for? Because there has to be some real driving purpose. And if an author doesn't have that purpose, then there's no point in even doing the book, right? But once they define the purpose, then they can figure out what the marketing strategies are best for them. Because not every author is going to want to do, a book launch tour
Mhm.
or start a podcast like your expertise, or even do anything outside of essentially getting their memoir maybe to their family and their close friends. And so we really try to help the author achieve whatever it is they want
Mhm.
for the end goal of their book and not force our marketing plan onto them because
Mhm.
everyone's kind of at a different stage in life as well. We work with a lot of very successful people who have already had sort of their day in the sun, whether that's in corporate America or academia, as I said, or some other career. And so they really want to memorialize their life story and their successes in a book. And they don't have necessarily interest to do that. So if
Uh-huh.
that's their category, then we are happy to help them get the best experience with their editorial and their design and their book launch and feel like a rock star on the book launch day and hopefully get some accolades and then let them sail off however they want. But for those who are really interested in building their brand or growing a podcast audience, as you said, or
Uh-huh.
getting the book out to help them pivot in their career or grow their speaking, platform, then it's really this long game. And I like to say there's no, grand slam, like where you're
Mhm.
going to just show up at one conference and speak on the stage, and all of a sudden you're going to have an audience.
Mhm.
So each author has to understand that this is a very long process, and wherever you're starting from is fine. So some of our authors start off with no social media accounts.
Mhm.
And so we get their accounts up and running, teach them how to post, how to comment on other people's, how to find the right hashtags, all of those kind of things that maybe, someone else, like we worked with an author, already had an Instagram following of 220,000 people.
Uh-huh.
So we need to teach her that. But, she was also in the midst of like almost birthing a baby and had to take a pause on her own marketing because she was obviously working with a newborn and becoming a
Mhm.
new mom. And so I think that there's this fallacy that there's a perfect time to start.
Mhm.
And there really is no perfect time to start or perfect place to start. It's just that you do start and that you
Uh-huh.
start from where you are. And the most important thing is defining your goals and be consistent with whatever that is. And so if it's, you know, building a speaker career, for example, what's the best ways to market for that?
Mhm.
Is it connecting with the right event planners? Is it going as an attendee to all the conferences you dream to be on those stages and start making connections? Then start buying those tickets.
Mhm.
So every author has to really figure out, what do I love to do? What am I natural at doing? Am I natural at talking and having conversations like on a podcast? Like that feels
Mhm.
fun and exciting to me versus I'd much prefer to like write a blog and I don't want to be on a video or on a stage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
so good.
yeah. So it's start from where you are and know that there's going to always be people ahead of you. There's going to always be people behind you, and you're going to be somewhere in the middle. As long as you stay consistent and have well-defined goals, I think starting any time is the right time.
Mhm. That's such great advice because I know we both have been in the industry for a while, and I think it's changed so much where it always, like, I think in the past it used to be kind of this cookie cutter plan, like this is how you launched a book, or this is how you wrote a book and got it out into the world. And it's just changed so much with like what you're saying. It really comes down to what you want to do and spend your time on and know that I don't have to do what the author next to me is doing, and it's
Hmm.
okay. And like you talk about, it is a long game. And I think people forget that too. You feel like I have to do everything around the launch date. And then you realize the next day, oh wait, I got to keep this up if I want to keep getting this message out to people. And I know that's
Yeah.
a lot of my listeners, they write in the Christian nonfiction arena or, even just the self-help arena. And that's burning on your heart to help people. And it is just a daily thing. You just got to keep getting at it, and just seeing, yeah, what is best for you. And I love that so much because so many people, talk about the video. And if you don't like being on video, you don't have to be, that's the great
Right.
news about it. And so, yeah, it's just so fun. Well, I know for both of us, we obviously love podcasting since we both host podcasts. And so I'd love to hear, what you have seen with authors, like whether they host a podcast or they guest on podcasts. How have you seen them really take advantage of being able to reach new readers that way?
Podcasting is an interesting platform. Consistency matters. Connecting with the right people matters.
Hmm.
Having the ability to be direct in your answers and learning some of those skills is very important. I'll tell you a sidebar story. Before I ever had a podcast, I was a guest producer for an XM radio show.
Oh, wow.
And it was my life coach mentor. I was trained as a life coach in 2009, and I started a little life coach business in 2010. And
Uh-huh.
that led me to writing my first book in 2012 because this mentor, David Essel, had this radio show, and his one requirement was to have a book.
Uh-huh.
So in order to be on his radio show, you had to be an author. And the light bulb went off for me like, oh, if I'm an author, then I can open some of these doors.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a week where, I'm booking the guests and one of the guests canceled last minute. And so he let me be on the show, which was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on a radio show with
Wow.
this
Yeah.
new life coach. And so I did the interview. And afterwards, he gave me some feedback and he said, when you're on an interview, answer the question directly
Mm-hmm.
and then give the mic back essentially to the host.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me time to learn that. And so I think that having a podcast for an author, it's important for them to guest and learn to be a good guest
Mm-hmm.
and pitch yourself as a guest. And then after you gain the skills, then you can maybe host a show. I haven't had any authors that have started their own shows yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I've had all of them on my podcast
Mm-hmm.
and get that experience. A lot of them for the first time being on a podcast, which is really why I started it, was to give
Mm-hmm.
them that opportunity.
Yeah.
And then how to start getting out there and figuring out, well, what other podcasts are there that the audience is interested in my message? So I would say the easier lift is pitching yourself to be a guest
Uh-huh.
than it is to be a host of a show. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always encouraging people to start their own show, but it does depend. I mean, it's just like the video
Mhm.
thing or anything else. It really comes down to what you're comfortable with. And I do think it's kind of a no-brainer on the guesting.
Yeah.
Definitely I encourage everybody to do that. And I love that, with authors, I think it's so fun that you can obviously talk about the topic of your book, but there's always so many more things like yourself. You're a publisher, you've published these different books and you help people, publish their books. And so you can talk about a myriad of topics on a podcast. So I love that so much. And I do encourage authors, like, you don't have to have a published book to guest first. But I do think, like what you were talking about, it elevates you. Like if somebody
Yes.
is looking at guests, they're going to pick the one that has a book. If you have people
Mhm.
talking about similar things, I do think it elevates your profile somewhat. But also at the same time, think having a podcast does too. I mean, I feel
I
like
agree. Yeah.
nowadays, like what you and I are doing today, we're recording back to back on our shows and swapping as a guest. And I think if you have that to offer somebody, that's nice to have that whenever you go guest. So if like for certain shows, if you
sure.
know that host does a lot of guesting, they're probably going to be much more open to having a podcast host on their show. But it is a lot of work. I mean, it's definitely just again guesting can be too. So, just
And writing a book is a lot of work too.
Yeah,
So
that's so
it's
true. Yeah,
so it's kind of like choose your heart, I
it
guess.
is.
But I think
Yeah.
it's all, like you said, it comes down to, and even on your website, you talk about like, what is your message? What is that
Mhm.
burning message that you need to get out? And I think that's where podcasting and book publishing are very parallel, is that they
Mhm.
both give you the opportunity to share your voice with a wider network of people than you could
Mhm.
otherwise. And so I
Yeah.
think they really go hand in hand. And I think if an author can hurdle some of those, technology maybe fears they may have around hosting their
Mhm.
own podcast or just hiring someone to do it. You don't have to know everything there is to know about how to audio mix, files.
Right. Yeah.
Where do you publish a podcast? Like other
Uh-huh.
people can know that, but as long as you show up with your voice and your heart, you can have an awesome podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. That's so true. Yeah. And I was thinking about what you were talking about. This is something, I mean, I've been at it for several years now, trying to, being a guest and a host. And I just find myself too, like sometimes as a guest, and I'll have to watch this when I record with you, April, but I can, I get excited and I get to rambling on and it's like, whoa, I spoke way too much. I never gave that microphone back to the host. And I do think, like you said, that's something you really do learn the more you guess, but then also when you flip the mic and you're the host, you really start noticing that, of your guest and yourself. So yeah, building those muscles for sure. Well, that's so good. I think hosting and guesting is both great, but it depends on, yeah, your personality as an author. So let's talk about your books, April, because you sent me a copy of your newest one, which I was so excited. Who me, an author? Question mark. If they can do it, so can you. which I was so excited because it was like that just so spoke to my heart because I'm still praying and pondering about what, if I'm ever going to get my first book out of me that's been sitting in there for quite a while. So tell us just a little bit about your book and who it's for and what's working well for you as an author, April, to market your book and reach new readers.
I love it. So, yes, Who Me an Author, O'Leary Publishing published in August. And it was a little bit of an update to a previous book called The Influencer's Path to Successful Publishing, which when I started at O'Leary Publishing at the end of 2018, I had only ever done my own books and I had my
Uh-huh.
first two clients, but I wanted this little sample book to explain what publishing was,
Mm-hmm.
not just, it's books, but like what are the different buckets? What are the different paths to getting a book? And then how does the process work?
Mm-hmm.
Because those were the questions I was always getting. And I thought, well, if I have this little book and I could give it to somebody, it's a great marketing tool.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to 2024, and now we've published about 50 books. And I thought to myself, let me update this and feature authors that publish with us for different reasons and tell a little bit of their story. Very short. I mean, this book
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
is like, under 10,000 words. It's a
Uh-huh.
4 by 6. It's like less than, I don't know, maybe it's 50, 60 pages, but
Uh-huh.
it's meant to be a giveaway for
Uh-huh.
O'Leary Publishing. So when we go to events or we're out networking, we can give it away and it answers a lot of questions. So for us, the marketing of that book becomes a tool. So it's not necessarily about, you know, selling thousands and thousands of copies.
Uh-huh.
It's more about giving away thousands and thousands of
Mm-hmm.
copies because that gives us the opportunity to bring leads in for new authors.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's been really our main marketing tool in a lot of face to face and event marketing. I went out to a conference that one of my authors spoke at in San Diego. And we sponsored the event. And part of that was having the Pumi and author on their giveaway table. So I sent 300 copies of it out there. And then those got taken by a conference that was full of mental health professionals
Oh,
who
yeah.
all have expertise. That
Uh-huh.
particular conference was for mental health professionals that are working with abuse, trauma, and violence.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm sure a lot of them have stories of hope that they could probably share
Uh-huh.
with others. So,
Yeah.
that was our goal really was to get the word out. And, maybe someday someone who picked up one of those books will have it pop off their shelf at the right time and they'll reach out to us.
Yeah. That's immediately what I thought when I received it. It's such a cute little book that you would pass on to somebody else. And like you're saying, I was just thinking, wow, that would be such a great kind of a lead magnet at a conference, especially if you're speaking somewhere, people want to get your book or they want to hear more from you. And if you had that available, like maybe you're writing a bigger book and it's just not available yet, but this is a perfect kind of step into that. It's precious size. So you put it in your purse, you can put it in your Bible, you can easily hand it out to people. But that
Yeah.
made me think of one more thing I did want to ask you, April, is just about the size of your book. Like I think because traditional publishing was the only way to go, it seemed like for so long. So everybody kind of has in their mind this set number of words, set number of pages equals a really good quote unquote book, right? But now you see so many other books and maybe they're niche down. Like that's what I think about. If I was going to write a book, it'd probably be super niche and small. But then I'm like, does that count? How would you speak into that concern that we potential authors have about, what size book should we be writing?
Well, I think in this case, size doesn't matter.
Mhm, yeah.
I can say
I love
that.
that.
Because to me, a book is meant to be finished
Hmm.
by a reader. So if you write a book that is super interesting to you, but it's 80,000 words and people can't get through it because they're busy,
Hmm.
that did the book really accomplish what it was meant to accomplish, even though it felt very robust with a hardcover dust jacket,
Hmm.
serious book. So to me, it's really thinking about your reader. How much time do they have? How much is already out there on the topic that they may have already read? How is this different? What am I saying that's different or unique? And most importantly, and this is what I love about independent publishing more than traditional, is that the author's in charge of their marketing in the book. So
Hmm.
we really help them think about, okay, yes, we want them to read your book, but what else can you offer them?
Hmm.
So we've started putting QR codes right in the front of the book so that the
Hmm.
reader can scan it and go get something from the website or opt into a Spotify playlist that goes along with the book, or, get into some sort of a funnel or like a book publishing consultation in the case of the Who Me an Author book. So thinking bigger picture of who is your reader? What do you bring to them? What problem are you solving for them? Not just in this book, but even how can they grow with you?
Uh-huh.
And so I think to me, the size is less important than how can I get the reader off of the page and onto my website or my social media, or otherwise they're an anonymous other that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I will say that with the Who Me an Author book, if you think about giving books away, sometimes shorter is better because the print costs are lower. Shipping like that book I sent
Yeah.
you, it's like $1 stamp that I can
Uh-huh.
throw it in an envelope and send it off. And, it costs me a few dollars to print it. Whereas if you have a larger book, the costs on everything go up. Your costs on editorial go up, your costs on design go up, your costs on printing go up, your costs on shipping go up, so
Uh-huh.
this is a very simple math metric that is important to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great tips. Oh, I love that so much. Oh, gosh. Well, April, this has been so incredible. And I'll be sure to put links to all your resources in the show notes. I'm so excited for our listeners just to check you out more and check out your books as well as your publishing company. And I just so thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Oh, goodness. Wasn't it so fun to meet April? I love what she shared about solving your readers' problems, not just in your book, but as they grow with you. Ooh-wee, that is something we're going to be talking about a lot this year. Thanks for tuning in today. And as always, I'll be there for you next episode to help you build your audience and reach new readers one podcast at a time. See you then.